You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
John Roberts has a much more powerful master than Trump expert based on an article by Alexandria Jacobson, investigative reporter. The Roberts court is not moderating power, it is reassigning it. The story in brief. The reporting here is straightforward. The Supreme Court, led by John Roberts, keeps handing Donald Trump wins, and when it does not, it often protects corporate power instead. Recent examples include the court's ruling allowing Trump to fire an FTC commissioner at will, its decision preserving Federal Reserve independence, a gun case that favored industry interests, and another ruling that narrowed consumers' ability to sue Monsanto. The legal story is the wrapper. The political story is who gets to command the machinery of the state, who actually holds power. The institutional power in this story sits with the Supreme Court and the Roberts majority, not with the legal abstraction called the rule of law. Roberts is not floating above politics. He is making political choices with constitutional consequences. The court is deciding, case by case, whether the presidency can absorb more direct control over independent agencies, whether corporate defendants keep the courthouse tilted in their favor, and whether public regulation survives contact with concentrated wealth. That is the real hierarchy. Trump is the beneficiary in some cases, Wall Street in others, and the justices are the gatekeepers deciding which faction gets the machinery. The public is not a stakeholder in that arrangement. It is the subject, Trump, Roberts, and the shared logic of control. The decision letting Trump remove the FTC commissioner at will is not a technical adjustment. It is a power transfer. It weakens the idea that agencies meant to police markets can stand apart from presidential pressure. On its face, that sounds like legal doctrine. In practice, it gives a president with open contempt for institutional restraint another lever to reward allies, punish enemies, and bend oversight toward personal interest. Graves's description of Roberts as a political player is not hyperbole. It fits the record described here. When Roberts does not line up with Trump, the article says, he often lines up with business interests instead. That is not neutrality. It is a preference ordering party power first, corporate power second, democratic accountability nowhere near the top. Corporate influence is not background noise. The article keeps circling the same point because it is the point. The court is not merely conservative. It is structurally hospitable to corporate control. The gun industry, Wall Street, Monsanto, trade groups, dark money networks, and megadonna-backed non-profits are not incidental actors filing ceremonial paperwork. They are part of the governing ecosystem around the court. That matters because legal legitimacy is being used to sanitize outcomes that are deeply political. A ruling that limits gun regulation gets framed as constitutional reasoning, not as deference to a heavily financed industry. A ruling that shields Monsanto from liability gets framed as preemption, not as another way the courthouse closes itself to ordinary people. The language of doctrine hides the distribution of power, the fraud of symmetry. The article's strongest value is that it refuses the lazy lie that these are equally legitimate pressures from different sides. They are not. Trump is using the presidency as a vehicle for personal rule. Roberts is helping normalize the legal conditions that make that easier, while also protecting the corporate class that benefits when the state is weak against them and strong against everyone else. The real misdirection is the idea that these are isolated rulings with no governing pattern. There is a pattern of the court increasingly shields concentrated wealth, narrows public recourse, and enlarges executive discretion when it serves the right political project. The result is not a balanced constitutional order. It is a more extractive one. What this pattern reveals, the broader lesson is grim and concrete. American institutions do not fail only when they collapse. They fail when their guardians quietly repurpose them for the interests already strongest in the room. The Roberts Court is doing exactly that, converting legal authority into a mechanism for elite immunity and presidential leverage. That is why the court's defenders lean so hard on procedural language. Procedure is a costume. Power is the body underneath it, and the body in this story belongs to a judiciary that keeps treating democracy as a constraint to manage, while treating corporate power and executive abuse as conditions to accommodate. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article, with the automated voice of John. Thanks for listening.